Hi, this is Rose from In Rose's Garden, and I had somebody ask me the other day how to make rings. So we're going to turn down and we're going to make a couple of really simple rings, but it'll give you the gist of what it is you need to do. So, like I say, let's turn down and get to it. Okay, to make rings, the most basic things you're going to need is a ring mandrel. I have two. This one is steel. And this one is plastic. Now this is lightweight, so if you're traveling, this is one of the easiest ways to go. It's also relatively inexpensive, but it will work. But right now we're going to use the steel one. Obviously, you'll need cutters to cut your wire. I use this pair from Beadalon, even though I absolutely love them because I damaged them on some stainless steel wire. You can see the holes probably inside the cutters there along the nicks, along the blades. Unfortunately, but it still works good for wire. So anyway, flush cutters. You'll need either a burr cup or a little file to file the ends off so they're not rough. And then of course you'll need some wire and some whatever you want to use as a decorative piece in your ring. Oh, and a tape measure's good if you don't eyeball your stuff. Then of course we're going to need wire. I use 20 gauge. So I have it 20 gauge in a number of different, this is all craft wire. I have it in a number of different colors. Most of this is soft flex, but I also have some Beadalon, which is the artistic wire brand. So we have lots of colors here. So let's start by making us a little ring with this first rose here. So of course the first thing we need to do after we've picked our focal piece is to decide what style of wire we want. I think I'm going to go with this coral color for this green rose. So let's just stack the rest of the colors up over here. Get them out of our way. And we'll get some wire out. Now I usually just eyeball it, but I will measure it for you so you can see about how much I used. I don't use a lot. It's not really necessary, but let's cut this piece off and then we'll measure it for you. Now I straighten it somewhat. You don't need to straighten it a lot. After all, you're going to bend it in a circle anyway, but closer if I can get this to this is about 13 inches and it's really more than I need. You usually need about 9 to 12 inches. So the first thing we want to do is choose the size of ring we're going after. So you take your ring mandrel. You'll notice it has the sizes printed here on it. You want to go up at least 1 to 2 sizes from the size you want. Then wrap your... Now, I try to get about a third on each side because I like 3 bands. Not everybody does, but along the back. So I try to keep them relatively even. So just wrap it around the size you want, plus a little bit. Now, once you have that on, you see it's nice and round here. And now we're going to put our bead onto the wire. The bead on the wire is pretty simple. You just feed it on one side. And then you roll it around your wire till you get to the spot that you want it to rest at. Now there's where I have the 3 at back here. Now we'll put this back on the mandrel now that we've got the bead in, and we're going to pull it so we make sure we've got it the tightness we want it and on the size we want. Now remember, you're wanting an extra little bit. So let's pull it to either side of the rose. I do have 3 bands back here. You only need 2. I put 3 in sometimes just to give it that extra little bit of strength, but you really only actually need 2. So anyway, now that we've got this on here, we're going to take these extra sides and we're going to pull them around our bead. So they're going to the other direction. Now, if I was going to make a nested one, which we will make one later, I would wrap it around more times. But this is fine with just one time. It will hold our bead in place, and that's all it really needs to do. So now that we've got this done, again, check that you're just one size up from the size you want to make. I'm going to make this ring a little smaller than I have it here. So just tighten her up. Make sure she's good and tight still. And then take her off. Now that you have her off, put your fingers against the wires. And then bring this wire that you twisted up and around and go underneath and through the wires that are here. Bring it up and then tighten it up. Now I always use my fingernails to do a lot of my tightening. You don't have to, you could use pliers, but if you're going to use pliers, you've got to remember to be careful because these wires are coated with this color and you can ding them up easily. So anyway, once you've got the one side done, go to the other side, and like I say, hold your wires in place, and then push this other side through to the hold of it, and then tighten it around those wires again. So now you have the wires going around and you have some wires up here on the banded piece. Now your next step is simply to wrap these wires. Just continue wrapping. You'll want at least 2 to 3 wraps so that you have a good base for your ring to sit at. I personally prefer at least 3 or 4. Now the more times you wrap around your ring wires, the smaller your ring is going to get. Now I like to keep mine even from side to side, so this has got 3 and at the top wire. So let's go to the other side now and wrap it around. Now remember, you can make your ring smaller by simply wrapping more wire around the band. However, you cannot make them bigger. They will only stretch out so much, And in order to get them to stretch out after you've made them, you have to force them down further on your mandrel. And that works for a little bit, but it's a very little bit. You can maybe sometimes gain half a size by that. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, we've reached our 4. This one is not going to be large enough to do anything more with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim this just a little bit, and then I'm going to file it. So we'll take our cutters and we'll trim it just a bit. So now that we have it trimmed, we want to file it just a bit to get off any rough edges. Now remember, like I said, the coating will come off of your wire, so you want to be careful and not sand a lot of places. Now see, I just nicked the wire down here. So, something you got to be careful of. It still feels a little sharp. This is where a burr cup actually works a little better because it does keep those out. Now you're going to take your pliers and carefully bend that extra piece down over the top here. And then feel to see if there's any more rough edges. And that feels pretty good. So now we'll go to the other side. On this side, rather than bending it down and doing that, filing it and bending it down and such, we're going to make a tiny little spiral and push it back up here by the flower. So just take the very tip of your pliers and roll them around and grab hold of them and spiral. And then once you've got your little spiral, just take it and bend it with your finger up towards your focal bead. And there we go. Now, the next thing we want to do is, of course, check our size. See if we got it about the size we wanted. As you can see, I started at a 10 and now I'm at 8.5. And like I said, you can make it smaller yet or larger a little bit by just jamming it down on your mandrel further. Or you can make it smaller by just wrapping more wire around the base of your ring. But there's one ring finished. What do you think? Do you like that one? It's pretty cute, huh? Okay, now that we've made one ring, how about we make another one? We'll use this little bead here and make a nested ring. And we're going to use, I think we're going to use this magenta wire. So again, we want about 12 inches of wire, maybe a little more. I'm afraid I tend to not to just eyeball what I want, so I've got out some wire. Cut this loose. And now we're going to wrap it around the mandrel. So I'm going to make a slightly smaller one this time, so I'm going to start at an 8. We'll wrap this. And then we'll come this way. And at this point, you can put your bead on if you want to, but I'm going to warn you that it's going to try to slide off of your wire, and your wire will bunch up some, so you have to be careful. See how this did this little bend in here? So that's the reason why I usually do not put the wire, the bead on the wire till I've already got it wrapped. So let's take that back off. Straighten the wire up again. And just do its wraps. 2 and since we have it like this, we're just going to twist it around here. We have the 3 in the back and the 2 in the front. Now we'll want to roll our bead on. Sometimes the beads do not want to go around and you might have to unwrap your wire just a little bit. If that's the case, you can wrap it back up. The wire does tend to have a little bit of like a memory. So if it comes undone somewhat, come on baby, up and at it, there we go. You can put your finger in and pull it back around like I just did. And you see it's still pretty well the size we wanted it. So now we're going to, now I'm going to show you something in the plastic one that I really like, and I sort of wish the steel one had it too. It's got a little groove where you can slide your bead into there, and that doesn't hump the wire up so much. So we're going to take it down to here. Now this one I'm not going to pull really tight because I don't want this wire to get all bumped up like it was when I showed it to you earlier. So the next thing we do is just like we did with the other one, wrap the side wires around your bead. Now the difference with making a nested one though is you push this wire down with your fingernail or whatever you wish to use, but make sure it's something that won't mar your wire up too much, and then you just wrap some more. Let's bring it around again and bring this one around again. And you can do that as many times as you want as long as you have wire. And you'll notice it now has a little edge all the way around the ring with the 2. Now the next step we're going to do is to put the wire around the 3. So again, you hold it with your finger and hold the pieces in place. Take your wire that came across the top, bring it over, push it through the other wires. Now bring this wire up and out of here. And while still holding these wires, tighten this up. And then push it up. Now we'll go to the other side and do the same. Hold these 3 wires in place. Now you see one side is going to have more wires because there's 3 in the back, and that's all right. Now push this through. Hold the wires. Tighten it up. You'll notice this one has slipped up some. We want to push it back down in place. And then tighten. And around. Now we're sitting looking like this. And if you need to adjust your little nest, just sort of work it with your fingers until it's more the way you want it to look. And then you're just going to do the wraps on the side. Let's put this aside for right now. And let's get to the wraps. Now see, I've let this one twist up, so we're going to see if I can get it back in place before we do the wraps. There we go, it's back in place now. And now for the wraps. As I say, you want a minimum of 2 to hold that in place good, but you can make as many as you want that you have wire for. You'll notice I have a divot in my thumbnail. I've been doing a lot of wire work this week, and it chips off the middle. After I decide I'm done with wire work for the week, I'll cut my nails so that that'll be done. But that actually helps me because it slides right into the place. Come here, you. Stop slipping out of my hand. Okay, now go to the other side and do it. I was going to show you what a burr cup looked like, but of course I couldn't find it since I wanted it. It's just like a little wooden dowel with a piece of metal at the one end, and that one end has a little cup in it which has some little grooves that then you put the wire into that little cup and twist it back and forth, and it will round out whatever it comes in contact with. And in that way, it's actually a little bit better than a file because you don't have to worry so much about filing your other wires up. Okay, let's see how many I have here. 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I think I'm going to put a couple more on here. I can push this ring down some, so that my nest isn't up so high. And this one I am going to just file some and not do the little spiral. Okay, and now for the other side. This side's wire is shorter, so it's actually easier at this point because it easily goes up and over without having to fight going through the holes. Okay, now we're going to trim what little edges are left here, and then we will file and push them down into place. So I try to cut it so this wire sits right up on the top beside the one right above it, so that it is in place, but it's not in place in a way that it's going to give the one beside it problems. So okay. So now that we have that filed, take the pliers and push that down into place. That's still a little sharp, so I'm going to have to get it squished down just a little bit more. Okay, that's good. Okay, and there we go. Now, if your ring has gone a little wonky, see mine's a little bit crooked here from being worked with on this end, just take it and put your thumb in place and push it over. There we go. It's straightened back up. Our ring is finished. And now we can put it back on the ring mandrel, see if it actually ended up being the size we want. Now see, this one went down to a size 5 because I tightened it up quite a bit while I was working with it. And if you need to, like I say, you can squish it down just a little bit more, and you could probably force it into stretching enough to make another half size, but that's the best you're going to do. So anyway, there's ring number 2 done. Now ring number 3, I'm going to make a little bit different. Okay, now we're going to start a little blue ring using this blue 20 gauge wire and these 2 little miracle beads and this crystal spacer. This one's a little trickier because it is a 3 bead. So we want to put our beads on, get our mandrel, and now you've got to sort of hold these in place while you wrap your wire. Otherwise, they're going to try and escape on you, like they're doing right now. So that we'll wrap the wires around. Okay, now we've got these wrapped around here, and make sure you've got them where you want them. And then the next step is going to be, just like normal, to bring this outer wire around here. And then we're going to do the same with the other side. The difference is we don't want to pull these tight because we want these wires to show out here on the outside, like sort of like a little nest still, but or a little frame. So we're going to pull these in like this, and then when we pull it off, we're going to do our darndest to not pull those wires tight. So you might want to put your finger on top of them because this one's going to try and pull up, so push it down and then hold this. Hold this wire while you pull it through, or push it through as the case may be. As you see, I've still got this wire on the outside, but I also have a lot bigger gap than I normally do here, but that's all right. Now, because we don't want these beads to gap really far though, and pull apart too much, we want to make sure we have it tight enough to snug that wire against those beads. So let's just do the same with this side that we did with that one. Hold this right here as we push this wire through. Come on, baby, go through. And then wrap around. Now, as you can see, the wrap is down a lot further than it normally is. I want this one up a little bit more because we want it in comparison to the other side. But then we are going to have to push this wire down because, as you can see, it's bowed up some. And now we have this little frame around the beads. So now we're back to what we normally do and just wrap the wires around. So let's do that. So now if you want, you can push this up a little so that it doesn't have quite as big of a gap there. And then just wrap it like you would normally. And we're going to do like 4 or 5 wraps. And there's 4 on this side. Turn it and do the 4 on the other side. And 4. Now once you've got the wraps done, if you have extra wire, you have a choice. Do you want to make a couple of those little spirals and push them up towards the beads? You can do that here if you wish, or you can, see, this is up a little bit, so let's push it down, or you can just cut it off here, or add a few more links, a few more wraps, however you want to do that, and then we'll go from there. Now we have this, and like I say, we have to make that choice. So are we going to spiral, or are we going to just cut it off? If you're going to spiral, try and get your spirals, if you're doing 2, to be about the same length. So you'll want to cut this other wire over here so it's the same length as this one. So let's do that. It's about right. Oh, maybe a little further. That looks good. So we'll cut our wire off, and then we're going to start a spiral on either side. So now we have got that trimmed off, and we're going to create our spirals. So remember, when making your spirals, though, that you have to be careful with this wire because it is coated, and you don't want to knock the coating off if you can help it. Sometimes it's sort of hard to help it. So just wrap a loop. This spiral isn't perfect, but it's going to be tucked up by the beads, so. So there's one spiral completed, and you'll notice I pushed it up and tucked it right into that little hollow spot. Now we're going to do the same thing with this one here. So we just make this spiral by taking the very tips of our pliers and making a little circle, and then after you take it out, just twist it up by holding it with the flat section of your pliers. Now when you get the spiral going, just take hold of it with your finger and push it up so that it fits, and squish it right into that little hollow spot at the base of the stones. And there we have it. Our ring is done. Let's get that tucked in a little better. There we go. I like that better. So there we have one little ring. This little blue ring. So that's 3 rings now. And there are numerous ways you can make rings. Rather than the nesting, there's the nesting way. There's this way that I showed you with the little frame around the 3 beads. You could also make a ring with 3 beads and then have the wire go between the 3, right between the 3. Let's say the wire goes in here and in here, so that there's actually no wire around the middle bead. It just sort of frames it. And maybe we'll make one of those. Let's see what I decide. Okay, let's see. I found these 3 beads, and we'll make one with the wires in between the beads so you can see how that works. So let's just start that up by choosing first our wire color. I think we'll just go with the red, and then we'll need to cut our 12 inches of wire. Of course, again, we want to cut some wire. So let's just get this pretty red, and we'll get about 12 inches of that. This might be more than 12 inches I'm getting because I just get whatever feels good or feels like the right amount. I'm not much for measuring, I'm afraid. So here's about 12 inches of wire. Get our ring mandrel out. We're gonna start the twist. Now we need to put the beads on. Oops, this little red one is trying to escape here. And let them roll to about where you want them to be at. Now I'm going to put this on the mandrel for this next section. You don't have to. You can do it free form while it's in your hand. But what we need to do now is we need to pull the wires. But instead of going around all of the beads, we're only going to go around the outer bead on either side. I take that back. We're going to go around the brown bead and come back this way. Then we're going to go around the brown bead coming the other direction, and so that it captures these. So how we're going to do that is we take this wire, go down, go between this, and then come back this way. Now we take the other one, go over here, go back this direction. Now we've captured that brown bead or topaz in between the two reds with the red wire. Push that down in there if you need to. And now the next step is to do our wraps on either side. So we do this now just like we would normally by holding our 3 wires, but see, this one's going to try, these are going to try and escape, these little red ones. So pull them around to hold them in place, and now wrap. So here's their first wrap. Remember, you want to make sure your base wires are staying pretty good. Now we're going to go to the other side and wrap around this, but you'll notice this one's trying to get out. So hold it up, go around, and pull it tight. All the while trying to hold your base wires in place. So here is, and this one looks a little funky because this wire has sunk below it, so we want to try and push that up some, or push the red bead over to the other side, one or the other, but there we go. Now the next step is simply to wrap like normal. So let's get some wraps on these. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And push, I'm going to push these up with my thumb like normal. And then we're going to trim this one in just a moment, but first we're going to go over here and we're going to wrap these 3. 1, 2, and 3. Let's count, see how many we have. That looks like 4 here, but it looks more like, well, that's 4, but when this comes down, it's going to make a 5th. So let's wrap this one more time. There we go. And now we need to cut our wires and get them all filed some and into place. So let's cut our wires off right here. And now we'll get the file out and file this side down and tuck these wires in. So here's the file, and we're going to file this one side, being careful not to bang too many other things while we're at it. Okay. Okay. Now the next step, of course, is to flatten those little pieces into the edge here. Fill, make sure it doesn't feel sharp. This one wants to slide down some, so we're going to fix that. Okay. That one's feeling a little teeny bit sharp again, so we'll push it down again. Okay, now that we have that done, we'll push it back onto the mandrel and get it rounded back out again, because when you do that, it tends to lose its shape some. So as you can see, there's this wire goes around this side, and this wire goes around this side to trap those wire beads in place. And there you go. That's a 3 trap. And now we've made 4 different rings. One a simple go around and hook with the rose. One a nest. And like I say, if you had more wire and you wanted to, you could nest this quite a few times. It doesn't matter how many loops you make, as long as they'll stay on. One with 3 beads and little spiral sides, with a little cage-like around. And then, of course, the 3 beads with the separator wire in between. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and let's turn up and we'll give a little talk. Again, this was Rose from In Rose's Garden, and we've been making rings. And I hope you enjoyed the rings we've been making. Got 4 of them. These are the 4 rings we've made. I hope you enjoyed watching me make these, and I hope that helped everybody learn how to do some of these. And I hope you enjoyed yourself. Again, Rose from In Rose's Garden, and we'll see you next time.